Oh my gosh. So when it comes to this idea of forgiveness, when you think about having to forgive others, you realize that this saying of forgiveness is not for them, it's for you, you realize the depths of its truth. When you are holding back from forgiving somebody, it leaves a mark on a particular part of your life. The problem with that is that you think that it's just in that part of your life with that person, but the truth of the matter is that it left a lasting impact on you, so it shaped the way that you respond to other people, subconsciously respond to other people in other situations, even when it may not even be the same, right? Because we've heard and we talked about where it's like, oh, you start responding differently in similar situations. No, you start seeing the trauma where it isn't. Let me try to see if I can get an example going for you. So if somebody that you trusted lied to you, matter of fact, keep it real with y'all, it's NSG, I give stories. Abandonment. My mother, and I bless her, I pray she's doing well. My mother, who birthed me, didn't raise me. And not only did she didn't just give me away. No, she kept me for a little bit. She kept me for a little bit, but she didn't raise me. She wasn't there. I was left alone. So I left my mom, and my grandmother took me, her mom took me at 8 years old. So now think about this. From birth to 8 is when this abandonment happened. Think about that. 0 to 8, a child being left alone. My mother off doing her own thing, real private woman. So people really didn't know what was going on. They didn't know where I was majority of the time because they didn't know where she was. Okay. So we know that for our parents, we still love and want them no matter what. It's that internal thing. And if we really want to think about it, the reason for that is because we are growing inside of them, and there is a bond and an attachment that just can't be duplicated. So that's my mother. That's the woman who I grew inside of, who I bonded with. So when she didn't fight to keep me, when the system came in and was like, yo, something got to give because we got to get this life right for this kid. When my mother wasn't showing up to court, and when she wasn't doing particular things and didn't fight to keep me, didn't get on her shit to get me back, left a mark. And it set the foundation for abandonment at 8 years old. Hell, it was probably set way before then because she was leaving me in the house by myself and I didn't know when she was coming back. But that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go with the things that I kind of really remember. So set the tone for abandonment. So fast forward in my teens, 20s, 30s, I'll be 40 next year. And still there's a little remnant of that. Fast forward to the adult years, and you're dealing with people. And as soon as I encounter people, because of what happened and I didn't release, because of what happened and the thing that I didn't release, I used to have a wall up. And on this wall was like this kind of, and I used to have a wall up and kind of imagine, if you will, like on this wall, there is a whole list of instructions on what you can and can't do to get behind the wall. And it's so many that it's really unachievable. So because of this incident, me subconsciously, I start saying to people, you took too long to call me. I'm going to play the game, right? Because just in case you were thinking about abandoning me. So then what happened was when I started dating, we get into this, I got into this game where it was like subconsciously, not even realizing where it come from. But I'm going to tell you what I was doing because this may sound familiar to a lot of you guys, right? So I used to be like, okay, you going to ask for my number because I'm not asking for yours. And when you get my number, if you take too long, and when you get my number, after we speak the first time, right? If you think that I'm going to call you back, I'm going to play the game. And I'm not calling you. I need you to show me that you want to be here. So on that second time that we speak, it'll be determined upon whether you come or not. Meanwhile, what is really happening in my subconscious is I wanted something. I see a dude, I want him. We're talking. If he did not ask for my number, my fear of rejection, my fear of potential abandonment wouldn't even allow me to ask, because I would feel like if I dare ask and he said yes, if he said no, that spoke to a different side of me. But if he said yes and gave it to me and then didn't show up in the way that I needed him to, I would feel like I purposely sought out my abandonment again. I sought out the person who was going to do to me what my mother did. And in my mind, I was trying to run far away from anybody who would ever potentially thinking about doing that to me. And that's how it played out. Now, when did I discover that that's what it was attached to? Like 3 years ago, 3 years ago, is when I realized that my walls looked real good. I mean, like I'm a Bronxite, so I'm into graffiti art. Like it's something about graffiti art. And I'm talking about not this kind of the murals where people are painting kind of like with spray paint. I'm talking about like hardcore graffiti letters and different colors and the way that the spray paint drips, like, it's something that there's a beautiful artistry to all that for me, right? So my eyes are just like, when I see it. So my wall looked like that, dope as hell. Problem is that that's also chaos. It looks like chaos to just the passing eye. So because of something that had happened to me that I didn't let go and forgive, that my mother had done, I had then created chaos and labeled it as beautiful art. But other people coming in and looking at it, they just see chaos. And when I really started to assess, matter of fact, I do remember it was last year that I finally forgave. And it was because I realized that, my mother, while I may never know, because she still to this day does not open up and talk about those things, while I may never know what actually was going on for her in those moments, what I can say is true is that I know how damaging trauma can be to a person because I lived it. And I know how the holes of trauma can impact your life for decades because I lived it. This happened to me when I was 8 years old. I did not realize that I needed to forgive her in order to heal me until I was 38 years old. 30 years. And as I'm speaking this out loud to you guys on this live, it's clicking for me, right? Because I did the work to release her and heal her. To release her and forgive her. But I don't think that I actually thought about how, when you say the numbers, like, it's been happening for a while, but 30 years. 30 years. When my mother had me, she was 25. She was 25. When she left me, she was 33. That's interesting. That's when Jesus died. Digress. She was 33. 25, having a baby. I'm 30. It's been 30 years for me to get over it. So imagine 5 years prior to me forgiving my mother, if I would have had a kid, the damage that I would have done to my kid in those 5 years before my transformation wake up. And who's to say that I would have had a transformation wake up, because now I got another person that I have to be responsible for, but that other person may also be a reflection of my trauma. So that may then inhibit my ability to release. And all of these things started to click for me. And I'm like, that whole saying of, I did the best I could. My mother really, really probably did do the best that she could with what she had. And while on the surface, it looks like that's a shitty fucking job, from the depths of the purity of her heart, buried underneath all of the trauma that her 25 years of life probably gave her, she tried. She didn't have an abortion. She tried. She didn't give me away in the hospital. She tried. She may have stayed out some nights and left me with whoever the hell. She may have stayed out some nights and didn't know where I was. But she came back at some point because she tried. And she couldn't see the impacts of that trauma was going to have on me, because she didn't know what the impacts of her own trauma had on her. And I release the pains of what another person who couldn't see their own pain did to me, because I realized that I do not deserve to continue that damage and that hurt and that course of living. So I forgive my mother, because I know that I know from the depths of me, I know that given all of what I just shared, when you really lay it out and look at it, that she did the best that she could. And I know that situations are different for everyone. That is the first thing that popped into my mind. I'm sure if I really actually took some time to think about it, I can think of a ton of other things that I had to forgive, or that I probably still need to forgive. Hell, we're growing and evolving. Never Stop Growing is the name of my business. But I feel that the process of forgiving the person who hurt you, who wronged you, who angered you, is still the same, because that process calls for you to look at how it's played out in your own life. Show compassion and think about what might have been going on in someone else's life that you didn't know. Remove the saying that we have of, that's not my problem. extend the compassion to say, I forgive you for what you did to me. And in forgiving you, I release a part of me that's been bonded to you because of this pain you inflicted on me. I really hope this is making sense. And the reason why I say I hope that it's making sense is because y'all have heard me say it so many times, and I can't even put any other words behind it to explain. But when I speak to you guys, I know that this business that I have was a gift from God, and so I give it to Him every time I come on and share. So while my thing may not be preaching, that's not my gift. It's still a reflection of the work that He can do in the lives of people, because it is me sharing my story and me allowing Him to speak to others through my story. So I say that to say, I kind of don't know what I'm saying to you guys in these moments. And that's not because it's bull. It's because it is the most truest, rawest form of who I am. The parts that if I were to stay up in my head and plan this out, I would never even think about giving you guys. But because my faith is so strong and I'm so grateful and I believe that He will use anyone for any purpose, I'm like, yo, do you. Whatever you need to tap into, whatever you want me to dump, it is what it is. So that's why I say to you guys, I hope it makes sense. This forgiveness talk is set to help place you on your path to healing by asking you to look at the thing that you are angry or upset about with a person. Start with one. Just start with one, because you want to get the habit, you want to get the flow down. You want to understand what that process is like for you. So start with one situation. Big, small, doesn't matter. Look at the situation. Think about, so this is coaching steps now. Think about how this situation, first, let me take it back, I'm sorry. What is the situation? How has this impacted you in the actual moment when it happened? How did it impact you, in the actual moment that it happened? How has it impacted you? And that's the biggest question. And I think that's why I kind of jumped a step. So apologies, because in coaching, you just naturally just don't skip. So the how it's impacted you is that's the meat and potatoes, because that tells you where your bond is with that person and how long it's been going on and why it's so necessary that you let it go. And the way that you let it go is not by pretending to let it go, right? And I say pretending because while we think we mean what we say when we're like, yo, I just let it go. Once you do that work and figure out how it might still be impacting you, you actually realize you didn't. You actually realize that you didn't. So think about the how. And once you get the how, at that point, now I want you to cross over, think about the person, and forgive them. I'm not saying call the person and forgive them. If your heart tells you to, if your mind tells you to, then so be it. But for you, in your own mind, heart, spirit, reflect on how it's impacted you and say, hey, you did this. I didn't like it, but it has caused all of these things to happen as a result. And these things have controlled me in a way that had this incident never happened, I wouldn't have experienced. So I am forgiving you of what you did, because now I'm going to think about where you might have been when you did this to me. I see how it's impacted you. And I recognize, because now you got to be humble and you got to think about both sides of the street. Somebody did something to you that impacted you, and it had this lasting effect on you. Because of that lasting effect, people who came in that period, right? Think about the period that I talked about with my mom, 30 years. So anybody that came into my life in between those 30 years were hit with whatever trauma I was dealing with, not because I'm an asshole, but because I just didn't know any better. I didn't know what was happening. So you are saying, for whatever period the incident happened to the discovery point, which is now, you are reflecting on how you might have impacted people. And because you no longer want to show up that way for other people, you're saying, yo, I can only imagine, and I may never know what was going on for you, but I forgive you because something was happening. Because you believe that there is good in people. And you believe that at some point we all came in pure and innocent and good because when we are babies, we do not know trauma. We do not understand how to be dicks, how to be assholes. We don't understand what that's like when we are in our infant stage. It is pressed upon us through experiences. So this person came in pure, so then you automatically know that something has happened to them that's caused them to do this to even you. Because sometimes you're like, but I've been so good and I'm like this, even you. That trauma don't give a damn how good you've been, because that trauma, unless they try to do some work on it, it can't see. That shit is blind. That shit is blind. It's just shooting in the dark. Bam, bam, shooting in the dark. So, forgive them to heal you. Okay, NSG. That was real. I hope that it resonated. And yeah, this is where I'm gonna leave it. We got what is this, bachata? I think I got this bachata going on outside. Kind of feeling it a little bit. It is Resurrection Sunday, and forgive others so that you can forgive you. What I am also going to share with you before I close out is my book now is available, and it's connected to my calendar. So you will see the sessions and the dates and the times that I have available. And listen, I think that oftentimes when we think about speaking to someone and getting help, it feels like there's a part of you that's challenged because it's like, I can do this myself. I had 30 years of I can do this myself before I was able to move through and realize I had to forgive my mother. And I'm a coach, and I've been a coach for the last 3-4 years. It took this long for me to get it. So before you go on another few years and with this, I can do this myself, I highly encourage you to think about the things that you're holding on to and try a session. Try a session and see what happens. See what transformations happen. We put out money for a lot of things. I accept credit cards. I accept direct cash payments through all the ton of the apps. There is a healing and a transformation that happens that then opens you up to only God knows when you actually start to do some work on yourself. So I put that out there as a reflection point. If you have any questions, you can email me or DM me. If you are ready to book, hit the button, book your session. As always, never stop growing, and I'll catch y'all next week.